Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Primetime Carolina. I am your host, Tanner Blue, along with my co-host, Dave LaFave. Just to let you guys know, I do have a little bit of a cold. I'm just coming off of it. So if I voice crack like a kid hitting puberty a couple times today, I apologize in advance. But you know what? The Panthers have lost 2 in a row, and I'm pretty pissed, and we're here to talk about it. Dave, what's going on?
I don't know, man. Just spending a couple days here being disappointed. So, what's up? And also, if your voice cracks, that's cool because you really made up for it with that WWE entrance you just gave us.
I try to do something a little bit different every time, but I really like that one right there. I think I might roll with that for the
Dog, you
future.
crushed it. You crushed it, man. You
Nice.
need that every day.
Thank you. But you know who didn't crush it? The Carolina Panthers. In what seemed like a very Ron Rivera-esque game where they didn't play that well, but they played well enough to win and have it at the end, and they just completely blew it. The Panthers fall at home to the Philadelphia Eagles 21-18 in what was easily the Panthers' worst game of the season. Sam Darnold threw 3 interceptions. The offensive line was complete garbage. Special teams was bad as usual, probably their worst game, which isn't saying much. Bad coaching, no adjustments, bad play calling. Man, it was a rough game. But at the end of the day, the Panthers were still there at the very end. And the good teams, they find a way to win those games. And the Panthers, well, they're not one of those good teams just yet.
Yeah, I don't even know where to start because you sat there and just routed them all off. There's so many places you could start with here with how ugly this game was, man. And you said it. You said it. It was their worst game of the year by far. They were the better team all game, even though they couldn't have played worse. They were still up 15-3, 15-6 at halftime, 15-6 going into the fourth quarter, I believe. So for them to find a way to lose this game is just abysmal, man. I mean, it is just I almost can't even put it into words how ugly this one was. To lose a game on a block punt with 3 minutes left or whatever. I mean, you just can't do that. Period.
You can't do it. You can't do it. And we'll start with special teams since that seemed to be a common theme in the game. Panthers allowing a blocked punt in their own territory, in the fourth quarter. You can't have that happen. That's terrible. The Panthers also, I mean, this isn't really a special teams play, but this is more of a defensive play. We'll get onto that a little bit later on. But, just their special teams hasn't been very good all year. The return game was a little bit better this week, I will say, with Erickson. He did a nice job. But, man, giving up that block punt, that killed us. And then, we'll talk about the offense. We'll start with Sam Darnold. Man, it was tough. It was tough to watch. I mean, it wasn't, before he threw the interceptions, it wasn't his best game. The offensive line was complete garbage, which we'll talk about that a little bit later. But, it wasn't his best game, but he wasn't doing anything to lose us the game until about the second half when he started to just, look very Jet Sam Darnold-esque. What were your thoughts on his performance in 3 interceptions?
Well, I certainly don't want to make excuses for Sam Darnold because he certainly wasn't great. It was definitely his poorest performance of the season. With that being said, like I said, I'm not making excuses for the guy. But it goes back to that offensive line is just such a liability for this team right now. You're looking at a defense that the whole game rarely rushed more than 4 guys, and it was because they didn't have to. They were getting to the quarterback with 4 guys, no problem, leaving 7 guys to drop back in coverage, and it showed with the turnover. And you saw on those throws that got intercepted, there was no open guys. There was nobody getting open. They were blanketed in coverage because they were just sitting back there playing zone. and getting pressure with four guys rushing. They had no reason to send anybody else.
Yeah,
So,
it makes it tough for Darnold whenever, the defense pretty much has your offensive line figured out. They know what they can do. Guys aren't getting open. And then he ended up just trying to force some things, and that's what happens when you force things like that. Unfortunately, you throw interceptions. I'm not here to say, oh, I knew Darnold sucked, let's trade him. I'm not here to do that. I'm not here to do that at all. I think he still is in a perfectly fine position. I'm not jumping off the bandwagon just yet. I know he's had a couple games where he's threw some picks, but I'm not at that point yet. I'm not giving up on the guy. But just not a good performance from him. But even though at the very end, even though the Panthers played really bad, they had a chance. They had about 2.5 minutes left. That's plenty enough time. 3 timeouts to go down the field. Sam Darnold throws a pick. If you want to be the guy, you can't let that happen. They could have even punted the ball. Had 3 timeouts. Could have maybe got it back. Maybe. But
yeah, it was just tough to see Sam Darnold out there making those decisions, and we saw it, in the game before that too against Dallas. Whenever he gets a little excited, he starts trying to make throws he shouldn't try to make, and it can get pretty ugly. But honestly, I just don't really see his play changing, and I'm not the same as you. I'm not jumping off the bandwagon because I do think he's a fine NFL quarterback. And I actually do think he's a quarterback who can, lead this team to wins and playoffs or whatever. But at the end of the day, until that offensive line is fixed, this team is in trouble. And I think if I had one message to, the guys running the Carolina Panthers, it's buckle up your chin strap and start playing some old school football, because that's what you're going to have to do with this team. I understand Joe Brady wants to spread it out and he wants to, spread the ball around, passes, whether they're quick passes or whatever. You do not have an offensive line that can pass block long enough for that type of offense. You have one of the best running backs in the NFL in the backfield. Granted, he's been out. And I think, that's definitely shown in the last 2 games with the offense, because I think he covered up a lot of these holes when he's in there with his ability to run, his ability to pass block, his ability to be a cheat code in the check down department. But I think, if this team is going to do anything, you have to understand you have a really, really good defense that just added Stephon Gilmore, one of the best corners in the league, if not the best corner in the league, over the last few years. So, excuse me. You have the opportunity to have a good season still. We still have some games ahead of us that are in our favor, but at the end of the day, you have to trust this defense to go out and win you games, and you can't put them in bad positions. If we didn't put this defense in bad positions so many times in this game, A, we definitely win this game, and B, we're not looking at Sam Darnold in such a negative light because he's not, forcing all these turnovers. So rather than focusing on trading for offensive linemen, because I don't think you're going to find that, the news today was that the Panthers were looking to trade for offensive linemen. That's great, but I don't think you're going to find any that are worth having. No one's just giving away offensive linemen. Everybody needs them. So I think, if you're the Panthers, you need to go out and find yourself another decent running back if you don't feel like you already have that. And you need to start just running this ball down every defense's throat that you go up against. And if you can't, you need to keep trying so you don't put your defense in positions that you're going to keep losing games.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I don't know the status of Christian McCaffrey. I would, excuse me, I would assume that he would probably try to give this week a go, but I don't know what the status of his play is going to be. I mean, kind of like you said, Darnold's one of those guys. I mean, he's not, going to go out there, and I think he can at certain points, but he has to be put in a position where, he's not going to be absolutely killed. And that's any offensive line. That's any quarterback that's playing behind offensive line. The offensive line, this is probably the worst I've seen it in a long time. And I've been saying that for a long time. So, there's not much the Panthers can do. That's really stopping them from getting to that, that next step in terms of being a solid team to a very good team, a very good young team. This is only a year or two in our rebuild, and we're experiencing the growing pains right now, but that's definitely an area that has to be improved. Speaking of Christian McCaffrey, Chuba Hubbard had a nice game. I mean, he was over 100 yards rushing, 24 carries on the ground. Once he got outside, he had a little bit of he's a very patient runner. I like what he did. Not saying that, he should be the starting running back or anything, but if he can come in and do that and just catch the ball a little bit better out of the backfield, then I'm totally content with having him as a backup running back. I think he did a pretty solid job, a bright spot in a dark game.
Yeah, I thought he looked good. I think he's definitely getting better as the year goes on. We'll see if he's able to withstand, a 17-game season. But, overall, you can't complain about what he did. But, like I said, I think he's going to need to be a piece of this offense along with Christian McCaffrey if the Panthers are going to turn this thing around, because right now they don't have any balance. Even if he's rushing for 100 yards, there's no constant threat of them lining up in the I formation, pounding the ball right at the defense. They come out and spread it out, and, they'll hit on a couple of sweep plays, off-tackle plays, read options, whatever, and he'll bust one for 10 or 12 yards. But as far as – and, this goes back to the whole short yardage situation that we've been having since the preseason. The Panthers have not been good enough in short yardage situation. It's because they don't line up across from the defense and punch them in the mouth.
No.
And until you do that a few times, you're not going to have that constant threat to run the ball. And when you have the offensive line that they have and you're planning on throwing the ball, 40 times a game, it's just not going to work out.
No, it's not going to, and that's not a recipe for success for any football team. So, excuse me, hoping that McCaffrey comes back and plays. Obviously this week, taking a look at the defensive side of the ball, the defense, I have no complaints. I mean, they played their asses off. They did everything they could. The only thing that could have obviously been the turning point in the game that I mentioned earlier was whenever, instead of having that safety just falling on that football, man, that was tough to see. I know. I wasn't in the play. It's hard to say when you're not actually doing it. But damn, if we would have just fell in that football to the end zone, man, we're having a different conversation right now.
Yeah, that was wild because you had, like 4 or 5 defenders right around the ball and somehow it just squirts through all their legs. So that was just a weird play. But, I know it's kind of nitpicking, but with this defense, if I'm just keeping it a buck, if I'm keeping it 100, if I'm keeping it a buckaroony, they have not come up big in big-time situations. They just haven't. As good as they've been at times, as good as they've been getting after the quarterback, as good as they were for 3.5 quarters of this game, they could have put the game away too, and they didn't. Blocked punt or not. And I understand that that's really not fair because the offense did so many things wrong and the offensive line was so bad in this game. But if we're going to start pointing fingers at everybody, I don't know.
I don't think you're being nitpicky at all, actually. I think, it's – if you look at the score, it's fair to say, wow, the defense played pretty good. What the hell are you complaining about? I'm not really complaining. I would say this is more of a motivational piece because the defense played great for 3 quarters, but when you get in that fourth quarter, when you're tired as hell, when the game's on the line, you've played good 3 quarters. What's going to define you is that fourth quarter, what you do in that fourth quarter. And even though the Panthers defense played very, very good and the offense played terrible, and the offense had opportunities to win the game, the defense could have came up big in that fourth quarter with like a turnover or a sack or so. I mean, yes, they had multiple turnovers. Just something to really submit that this defense is dominant. We have a very, very good defense, not a dominant defense. But I do see what you're saying. I agree. I'm not trying to crap on the Panthers defense. Believe me, they're the best part of this football team. But I do agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's completely unfair to be like the defense let us down. And I think in the post-game press conference, Matt Rhule said something about this. He said, something along the lines of our defense is too good to be, letting them score in that situation or whatever, which honestly, for a coach to not stand up for his defense in that situation, honestly, I don't really agree with, even though I'm sitting here saying the same thing. I'm sitting here saying it as a fan. I don't think as a coach that's the right message. But I do see what he's saying at the same time. If you want to be, a top tier dominant defense that people fear, you have to come up big in that situation. And it hasn't just been this game. It's, been other games too, in which the defense has had opportunities to put games away and they haven't.
No, I mean, I agree. And, the Eagles, their best offensive lineman, Lane Johnson, arguably their best offensive lineman, was out of this game. I don't know. Excuse me. I don't know how many sacks the Panthers had, but I mean, they have pressures. I know it's tough when you're going against a mobile quarterback, but I miss some of the sacks in this game and some of the tenaciousness of that defensive line. I know Hassan Reddick had a couple plays. Burns got some pressure and things like that, but man, we just couldn't quite get home sometimes. And even though the Panthers have gotten home a lot, I feel like they could get home even more.
Yeah, it's very frustrating when you look at this game because I think we just had this conversation like a week ago about the Panthers playing down to teams that they should beat. And there is just no reason they should have lost this game. I mean, just no reason. And so for them to blow it at the end, it's really just deflating more than anything.
What really matters to me is, listen, there's going to be games where you could be the best defense, you could be the best offense, you could be the best team where you are going to play bad. And there might be a team that is worse than you that you might play down to. That's just how the NFL goes. That's just how NFL football goes sometimes. Sometimes you're going to play an equivalent game to what the lower competition is doing. But all that matters is when that game is close at the very end, it doesn't matter how bad have you played, those final minutes when you have a chance to go and win the game, that's all that matters. And the Panthers did not do that. And that's what's frustrating. I can't think of a time since 2015 when the game was on the line and the Panthers said, you know what, time to strap up. Let's go win this football game. And that's something that I'm dearly missing. That's what hurt me the most, is not the fact that we lost. It's the fact that we, as bad as we played, we had the chances and we crumbled. Folded like a lawn chair in the front yard on a summer day.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no other way to put it. I mean, you can't lose the way we lost and it be anything other than just crumbling. I mean, that's the only way to describe it. It's tough. It's tough.
It was definitely tough. I didn't watch any football after the rest of this game. I was not in the mood.
I wasn't either.
I do take losses a lot better than I used to when I was younger. I'll tell you that much. But it's ones like these that just get under your skin sometimes. It leaves a bad taste in your mouth. I want to bring up the topic of Robby Anderson. And what's going on? I mean, I don't know if it's an X's and O's thing or I don't know. I feel like ever since he had that one touchdown in week one, Robby, he did drop a pretty catchable ball on a third down that would have gave us a first down to continue our drive on that last series. Where has Robby Anderson been at, man? I feel like we've been missing him all season practically.
Well, I think it's probably a couple things. That throw specifically, I didn't feel like that was the best throw for Robby to catch, although he still probably should have had it either way. It was one of those plays where I feel like both guys could have done a better job.
Correct.
But I think Robby Anderson, is just a deep ball threat. Not just a deep ball threat, but that's kind of, his role in the offense. And I think because, and I hate to point to it for everything, but because the offensive line's been so bad, there's no time to develop long routes. And we saw that They had an opportunity to hit a long route for a touchdown in this game. The defender, first of all, ended up making a great play knocking the ball down. But Darnold probably should have thrown that ball more inside. At the same time, I couldn't blame him at all for where he put it, because as he was throwing it, he was getting hit. He was almost jumping up in the air off platform trying to make this throw. And he put it in a pretty good place, being that he was getting hit as he threw it. So I think that's just one example of what's happening in that situation is, Robby's more of a big play threat, more of a deep ball threat, and we just aren't getting the opportunities to get the ball downfield because of poor pass protection. I also think back to last year, a lot of the passes he caught were crossing routes, which are not deep passes. They're shallow passes, but at the same time, they still take a long time to develop, just like a down the field route would. So, and I think you mix those couple things in with the reality that Sam Darnold has, locked in a little bit on Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore, as any quarterback would. I mean, it's, reasonable to say, why wouldn't you lock in on those two guys? But I think it's just some combination of the three. I don't feel like, Robby Anderson's season's over by any means, as time goes on, and maybe they'll get that connection back and find a way to, make some plays down the field.
I totally agree. I think, a lot of people are like, oh, we got paid, he doesn't care. Like, no, I don't think that at all. I think that it just hasn't excuse me, it just hasn't developed yet. The Panthers are, still working the kinks out in their system. He is a little bit more of a deep ball threat. And like you said, those crossing routes, those slants, I want to see a little bit more of those, but they just haven't had the time to really develop that behind this offensive line. DJ Moore is more of a finesse guy where he can make a quick cut and get the ball. He's going to do the rest because he's good after the catch. Robby Anderson is a little bit more, whenever he gets the ball, that's probably where it's going to be, unless he's got open space to turn it up the field. So, excuse me, I think people just seem to be a little bit more patient. I do think, I love Robby as a player. People, oh, I regret signing him. No, I don't regret signing the guy. Pump the brakes a little bit. He's a good player. I just think it hasn't happened yet, but I think it will. It will.
Well, I think, first of all, when it comes to his contract, it wasn't a super long contract anyway, so it's hard to regret signing him. I mean, he's going to be gone. He's still going to be gone in, 3 years or whatever?
Correct.
I think it's this year and 2 more years. So it's not like we gave him this 7-year contract and we're tied to him for life.
It was a team-friendly deal, so
yeah, exactly. And I think anyone saying that signing him was stupid is just, kind of silly. There was, I guess, I forget who said it, but it was a report from one of those team writers who said after the game he was frustrated that the team had not been running more double moves to try to get some deep shots because the Philadelphia corners were sitting on all the routes. And that just goes back to what we were talking about before. There's no time for them to get downfield because the offensive line can't block long enough. And that leads to these interceptions by Sam Darnold because these defensive backs have no reason to respect a deep throw. They know you can't throw it deep. If you try to throw it deep, you're going to get sacked. So they're going to sit on every route and try to jump it. And that's exactly what we saw in this game, especially on the second and third interceptions. Those defensive backs were waiting for those wide receivers to cut, and as soon as they did, they jumped the route.
It's true. I mean, and that comes back to a lot of coaching, which just brings me to my next point. It seems excuse me, I can't go one game. I can't go one sentence without coughing. I can't go one game without having to hear that Joe Brady is this great new up-and-coming coach, and it's not a matter of not trying to pick on Greg Olson because I think he did a phenomenal job again as a calling the game, which he's called our games now. We're 0-2. He might need to start calling some other games for someone else. But I keep hearing that it's not a matter of when, it's not a matter of how, it's a matter of when Joe Brady is going to be an NFL coach, the next big young NFL guru. I mean, I like a lot of the things that he does, but there's still a lot of head scratching play calls and decisions that I could just be nitpicking. I don't
No,
know.
absolutely not. I agree with you. I'm not gonna say I've never understood the Joe Brady hype because I get it, but I think the 2019 LSU Tigers are gonna follow him, probably for the rest of his life because everyone looks at him and they still think about how unstoppable that team was, and that team was just loaded with unbelievable NFL talent. And I'm not saying that's the only reason they were successful because it's not. He was a good offensive coordinator. He still is a pretty good offensive coordinator, but he is not the magician, calling plays that people seem to think he is. And he does do a lot of things that I don't agree with. And that's tough when you start talking, honestly, because I think people think offense, offensive coordinator, defense, defensive coordinator. And unless you really know how much say the coach has in it, it's hard to really criticize somebody. I get the sense that Joe Brady does have a lot of say in it, so maybe criticism is fair. But just because you saw the team run the ball on 2nd and 3 doesn't mean the offensive coordinator was like, hey, let's run the ball. It could have been the coach said, hey, I want to run the ball outside right, and the offensive coordinator had to pick one of, their outside runs that he thought would work. So you never know how much each coach is involved with each play call. With that being said, I do get the sense that Matt Rhule has given a lot of that, has put his confidence in Joe Brady to make a lot of those calls. And that just goes back to what I was saying before. If the Panthers are going to be a good team, they need to quit trying to outscore everybody. They need to quit trying to outthrow everybody. They need to quit trying to get 500 yards a game from Sam Darnold. They need to line up in a single back, I formation, whatever they got to do. And they need to start pounding the ball. They need to start handing to Christian McCaffrey between the tackles. They need to start grounding out some tough yards. So when they get into these games late in the third, fourth quarter, and they need a first down, they don't have to rely on a timing route, a timing comeback route to Robby Anderson that they haven't hit all game. They can hand it to Christian McCaffrey, and he can find some space for a few yards, keep the chains moving.
Man, you just took the words out of my mouth. I mean, I agree. I think they need to get back to basics. I understand McCaffrey's been hurt, but I mean, Chuba Hubbard had a fine game. It's not necessarily about who's back there. It's about trying to build that mentality against that defense so they are not just expecting you to pass the ball every game and to go 4 wide and to throw a timing click route, out route, whatever you want to call it, to one of your receivers. It's like you'll see, a lot of good play calls in a row and the Panthers get on a roll, and then you just see this one play that just messes up the whole drive, and you just go, man, what? I don't understand what that was. It just kind of throws the rhythm off a little bit.
I feel like we see that a lot with Ian Thomas. I don't know why, but it's like that dude can put a halt to a drive like no one else.
He can, like when they threw a screen pass to him.
I was gonna say, and it's not always his fault. It's exactly what you're saying. They'll throw like some weird backdoor screen that just completely was off rhythm of what they were doing.
Exactly. Like the drive will be going just fine. They threw a screen a yard or two behind the line of scrimmage. Cornerbacks jump it, loss of 2 yards. You're looking at 2nd and 12. Your drive is already toast. And it just takes all the wind out of their sails. And it's just they have not found that rhythm yet that makes me say when the offense gets the ball, they're going to score. I have not seen or felt that yet.
Right. I felt like we saw it a lot more last year. But I also think last year our offensive line was better, which is crazy because I felt like last year our offensive line was really bad. But God, this year they were just really, really bad. I would
They are.
kill for Okung right now. I would kill for Russell Okung right now.
Speaking of the offensive line, I watched a lot of Brady Christensen. I mean, he played fine. I mean, he didn't really do anything bad. He didn't do anything great. I mean, he just I think he was one of the I think he did get a holding call called on him, which is pretty typical in today's NFL. It's almost to the point I can't even hold the offensive lineman accountable for getting a holding call because a lot of them are bullshit. But I don't know. I mean, I think he played a fine game. I think Moton, literally switching positions, played a pretty decent game. It's the middle, it's the guards in the
Yeah.
center, man.
I agree with you. I think both the tackles actually played pretty fine, but that interior of that offensive line is just ugly. They are just really, really bad. And it starts with Paradis. He is awful. I mean, he is awful. He might be the worst center in the league. You know, when we signed him, we thought we were getting this top tier Pro Bowl caliber center, but he's just been
Panthers, we
bad
got
from the day he walked in.
catfish. We got catfish on that signing because
I'm telling
I
you.
don't know. I only know a handful of great centers. Only know a handful of centers in the NFL to begin with. And when they signed this guy, like, hey, this guy was like a elite level center for the Broncos. Perfect to replace Ryan Khalil when he retires.
Yep.
Did we miss the other years that he played football? I don't understand.
Dude, I can't explain it. And obviously, you know, I didn't really know him either at the time. I'm guessing, you know, the Broncos probably ran a lot more of a zone running scheme and it fit them a lot more. So it made them look a lot better. You know, they had Peyton Manning back there being the sheriff, calling all the audibles, getting quick throws, you know, throwing to whatever part of the field wasn't defended. You know, I don't know. There's any number of things that it could be that made this guy look good, but Jesus Christ, he's horrible.
Yeah, and you got to. I feel for the offensive linemen because when they walk in that locker room, they know they are the weakest link of that team.
Well, Matt Rhule hasn't even been coy about it in the press conferences. He's been, you know, throwing everybody under the bus. If you've been bad, he's talked about it. And the offensive line's the first thing he's talked about. And then today there's a storyline or whatever, a headline that the Panthers are shopping for offensive linemen, which, you know, that's not news, but again, that's just it being thrown in their face. So I see what you're saying. You know, I'm sure they do feel bad. But, you know, at the same time, it's like they should feel bad because they've been horrible.
They should.
I mean, dang.
And the thing I will say is a small bright spot in this otherwise 2-game skid is that previous regimes we would see, we lost the game, a lot of bad coaching decisions, things like that. Ron Rivera would never really take credit, would never say, hey, we did a bad job. We need to do better. You kind of just heard missed opportunities. Next game.
Yeah.
Even though, it doesn't necessarily always make it better, I like hearing Matt Rhule say, hey, we got our asses kicked in this phase of the game. We're going to go work on this. The coaches, I think this team is very honest with themselves, which I like. I like that.
Yeah.
Honesty always wins. And to do that and to be open and upfront about what you're struggling with and doing, poorly with your game planning, being the face of the team as the coach, I think I like that a lot.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, but I also think it's a slippery slope. You know what I mean? Because I feel like you don't want to get into the press conference and start saying, well, these guys didn't do well, these guys didn't do well, these guys didn't do well, and that's why we lost. And suddenly those guys feel like all the blame's being put on them. Because we've talked about it endlessly, how especially Joe Brady, we just been talking about, has not been perfect. Matt Rhule has definitely not been perfect. He's done all kinds of things that I was like, what the heck is this guy doing? So I feel like if he's going to hand out the blame to everybody, he needs to make sure he's handing it out to himself just as much. Otherwise, you can create some really bad locker room dynamics.
No, I agree 10,000%. I think it is a fine line that you have to walk in terms of that. And I think he's done a solid job of that. But, yeah, I agree. You don't want to go in there and just throw your guys under the bus, which I don't think he's done. But just putting that out there. So yeah, at the end of the day, this was a game that, even though the Panthers played bad, they should have come out and won, and unfortunately they did not. So Panthers lose one. I don't think the season's over. We've got a game against the Vikings, which I want to preview real quick. I haven't watched a ton of Minnesota Vikings games this year. They're pretty much about what they have been the past couple seasons, from what I understand. Obviously, Dalvin Cook is a great player when he's healthy. They have a solid defense. They're okay offense. I mean, they're pretty much a middle-of-the-road team. I think they're about the same level that we are, but the Panthers are at home again. And this right here, this is the Panthers' season right here. If they lose this game, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good. And the Panthers need to come out and they've got to make a statement. I don't care how ugly it is. The Panthers, this is a must-win game.
Yeah, it's interesting to look at week 6 is that what we're in, and call it a must-win game. But I agree with you. I mean, it really is, because as high as we were on this team 2 weeks ago, we're pretty low at this point. That loss really took the wind out of our sails. And again, it's a game we should have won, but as bad as we played, it's hard to find anything to feel good about. So if you come into this game and you lose to another 2-3 team at home, a team that you should beat, yeah, at that point, you're probably not too worried about making the playoffs anymore. You're probably looking, more towards tanking for a good draft pick. I mean, the issue being is where the Panthers are in their schedule right now, they have to pile up some wins, because at the end of the schedule, you're looking at potentially 4 straight losses.
Very true.
Between Buffalo, Tampa Bay, New Orleans, and Tampa Bay again. So
yeah,
while you're up here and you're playing Minnesota and New York and Atlanta, you better be piling up some wins, because there's a shot you lose 4 in a row. So sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, at this point, if you're going to drop, we'll say 3 of these 4 games, you better only have 3 or 4 losses. Otherwise, you just spent your whole season busting your tail just so you could miss the playoffs at the end.
Pretty much, and that would be very Panthers of us to do, so I wouldn't be surprised. You look at this game against Minnesota, it's a must-win, and then, you go beyond that at New York. That's not an easy – I know the Giants aren't the best team, but they're one of those teams that's sneaky good, where they will just – they won't beat a bad team, but they will beat a good team. It's weird. They're very sneaky good. And then you've got at Atlanta. That's the divisional game on the road. I don't care how bad the Falcons are. That's going to be a tough game. Then you've got New England. New England's not that great this year. It's still New England. Bill Belichick, solid defense. The Cardinals, undefeated at Arizona. That's probably a loss right there. Washington, very, very underrated team, very good defense. Tough game. At Miami, they're kind of in the middle of the road. You might win that game, and then you've got these games down here in the middle. I mean, not saying the Panthers aren't going to compete in any of these games, but, if we're going to be a team that's going to be a wild card team, this game right here, they've got to know this is a must-win game. We can't mess around. The Panthers got to win this football game on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. They've got to start cranking out some wins here. I mean, you can't lose to Minnesota and then expect yourself to be relevant by the time Tampa Bay rolls around in December.
No, you can't. So it's definitely a must-win game. I think it's going to be a tough game. But this game matters is how the Panthers respond, because this is typical. The Panthers started out 3-0, 2 weeks in a row. They lost. All the analysts are saying, we told you so. The Panthers suck. They're really not that good. Look what happens when they play a decent team, blah, 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 blah. We know that they hear this. Do you think those guys want to be remembered for that? They know that they're a better football team than what is being portrayed out there, what they've done. The Panthers know that they are a better team than the Minnesota Vikings. They know that they need to go in there and win this football game. And I'm going to be really interested to see how they respond. Very interested.
Yeah, it's gonna be a big game. This is a game that you have to win at this point, and it is, like you said, it's about responding, which we kind of felt like the last game was about responding too, because we were coming off of our first loss. But now it's like, now you really better respond because you're coming off of 2 losses. So
very true. So
we'll see.
I mean, I think the bottom of my heart, I think this is going to be another close game. I don't know if it's going to be as sloppy as a game, but I do think it's going to be a close game. I think it's 2 teams that are pretty evenly matched, I would say. But I don't know. I'm going to give the Panthers the advantage. Maybe that's just because obviously I'm a Panthers fan. I want to see them win. But I think this is going to be another close game, and they've got to pull this out. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. They lose this game, and it's going to be a long rest of the season.
Yeah, I agree. I think we'll win. I think we have to win. But, especially if Christian McCaffrey plays, I think that's the biggest if in this game.
If he plays, we win.
Yeah,
and he's healthy, and he plays the whole game.
I think we absolutely are going to need him to stay healthy, not only in this game, but for the remainder of the season, because we've seen what this team is without him, and it's just not pretty. It's just not. Sam Darnold is not capable of running this offense without him. Joe Brady is not capable of running this offense without him. And it's a shame because you shouldn't have any running back that is this big of a piece of your offense that he can't be replaced.
Correct.
At all. Obviously, you can't replace Christian McCaffrey, but it shouldn't be impossible to replace your running back's production the way it has been.
I agree 100%. I think it's going to be another tough game, but I think the Panthers will pull this one out. And I think, they're looking at themselves in the mirror right now, listening to their primetime Carolina podcast and saying, wow, these guys just lit a fire under my ass, and I'm ready to go run through a wall.
I'm telling you.
Football game on Sunday.
Yeah, they know they can't let us down again. They wouldn't be able to sleep at night if they did that.
They can't. They can't. Did you see the video on Instagram of the Eagles fans hooking up in the bathroom stall and getting arrested?
I did.
I tell you what, man, and I can't talk smack. I mean, the Eagles won the game, but I got beef with Panthers fans, man. There was so much green at that stadium. I knew there would be, but
yeah, never fails.
Show up and show out, man. I mean, the Browns have been garbage for the longest time, and they still have people at home games. Now they're finally getting better. Panthers fans have been non-existent since 2015. It burns me up. I can't stand the fair weather fans. Listen, I get it. If we're like 0-10 and we suck and you don't want to go to Charlotte and pay for a ticket to go to the game, I get it. But come on, man. This is the beginning, middle of the season. Panthers are in the thick of it. I need some more. I need more.
Yeah, I like to tell myself that it's just because we're a young team and we're not one of these franchises that has like generations of like dads and sons like going to games together and everything, and hopefully over time that'll help fill out our stadium, but still doesn't make it any less annoying. So I'm with you.
But that's neither here nor there. Bottom line, Panthers go in there and win this football game on Sunday. I don't care how you do it. Just win, baby, win.
Just win, baby, win. Just like DJ Khaled said, right? That's who said
That's
that?
Right. Just like John Gruden said when he sent me an email.
Oh, you know what? That's it for me, man. I can't say anything after a John Gruden joke.
It's a no for me, dog. I'm out.
All right, everybody, take it easy. Let's get
Go
this
Panthers.
Keep pounding.